Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Hebraic Awakening. We are continuing our trauma series, all right? During our mental wellness challenge, we have been discussing how neuroscientists, they are now opening up to understand how trauma has literally affected the brain. And we're talking about emotional trauma. We have trauma that happens to our brain because of injury, but we also have trauma that changes our brain because of emotional trauma. So let's talk about the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex. This is in charge of you being able to learn and being able to regulate your emotions. During our discussion, we have also wanted to know why when we have trouble with our thought process, when we go to the doctor, they do not want to really look at our brains, right? And so we are just studying and coming up with solutions that will better benefit us. During our challenge, we did tackle the subject area where Black people, right, we are afraid to go to many therapists or counselors because they practically don't look like us and they cannot understand our experiences. So this is why I have created a mental wellness challenge, and there are others who are beginning to talk about mental health. So it's highly important that we have communities that develop that's safe, right? That's not going to take advantage of us. They are not going to turn this into a mega ministry selling you gimmicks and things of that nature, that they are really going to be safe places for you to get information and resources that will help you to change your lives. When we are tackling our mental health, we are operating with wisdom and prudence, right? Wisdom dwells with prudence, and prudence thinks about the future. It does not make decisions based on just now, but it thinks long term. And so this is how we are going to break generational curse. So there are several aspects of the brain that can be damaged because of emotional trauma. But right now I want to talk about the frontal lobe, because this is responsible, as I said it before, for regulating our emotions. And this is where we do a lot of learning. But 4 to 5 generations of trauma, it has affected our ability to learn. Now, again, I am not saying that we are an illiterate people, in that aspect, but because trauma has been passed down and we are creating our own trauma, it keeps us from learning. Let's look at the generations after us. We have the millennials. I'm generation X. I think my husband is a baby boomer. And so we have millennials and we have the Gen Zs, and we're seeing that they are having a difficult time really coping. There are more suicides than ever, all right? There are more people who just can't take living any longer, especially our Gen Zs. And then we, Generation X and baby boomers, are asking, well, what is their problem? Their problem is us, right? We have passed this down and we have not dealt with our emotional trauma, right? We have not even tackled it. We just moving on with life, and it is keeping us from learning. I, as a special education teacher, have never seen so many cases of ADD and ADHD. I, have a tutorium hub, and I tackle these subjects over there. However, we cannot run away from ADD and ADHD because a lot of us have it, but we just haven't accepted it. No one has diagnosed us, but when we look at the symptoms, we suffer from that. And so it is passed on. So ADD ADHD, anxiety, depression, it all has to do with keeping you from learning, right? Because let's face it, if you suffer from ADD, ADHD, you have a hard time learning, not because you are unintelligent, but because you have racing thoughts. You are easily distracted. You are disorganized. You are anxious all the time, and so on. You cannot really regulate your emotions. You get easily angered, or you have a hard time developing relationships because you cannot control your emotions. This keeps us from emotionally evolving, right? And a lot of us are experiencing abusive relationships because that frontal lobe, right, your prefrontal lobe, is physically damaged. And listen, emotional trauma literally changes the structure of your brain. Brain atrophy is real. Things shrink, right? And I'm not going to deal with the other regions of the brain, but this one particular I am very interested in, because now I understand why we as a people cannot seem to have relationships with one another. We have women tearing down the men and men tearing down the women, and we don't understand each other, and it's getting worse and worse. It's because we have not dealt with our emotional trauma, and the Most High is not playing with us. He wants us to get healed, but we are so focused on getting out of here and moving abroad and getting out of the land, which I am not mad at, but we're so hyper focused on that we're going to take our unhealed, traumatized selves to other nations and traumatize them. And in my last video, we talked heavily about why you are attracted to toxic people. All right, and this is one of the main reasons, because right now you really can't decipher what you need to decipher. And because we are emotionally damaged, we are angered, we are distracted, we are hypervigilant, it's going to keep us from having healthy relationships. As we experience trauma in our childhood, this frontal lobe is supposed to be growing as we age. However, because of our childhood trauma, we see it really shrinking, okay? And so we really have to tackle this. We really need to, right, find therapists and get psychotherapy, behavioral therapy, because one thing I'm learning, you know, we can exercise, we can eat right. We haven't even touched how deficiencies in vitamins and certain foods is keeping us mentally unhealthy. We haven't even touched that. But even if we put everything into place, but we have not tackled how to change our behaviors so that we can learn, how to have relationships, right? So we can be better in school, right? Better at the things that we want to do in life. And again, I am not saying that we are unintelligent. I am saying that we are traumatized, and it keeps us from being able to do the things that we really want to do. Trauma has different levels, so some of us may be thriving in different areas than others, all right? But trust me, we all have some type of trauma that we are working through. It's just that some of our wounds are deeper and more difficult to heal. So that is the only difference between you and another person, all right? So I hope this video is helping you to understand trauma. I really pray that you get inside a safe community that is going to continue this discussion, that you are going to join groups that is going to challenge your thinking, challenge the way you behave, challenge the way you eat, right? Challenge the way you even don't want to have relationships and you just want to be isolated. That's a big thing, and it's rooted in trauma. You know, isolation is rooted in trauma. There is a time to be isolated so that you can heal and grow, but some of us are in isolation far too long. Some of us are in isolation all year long, and every time, I look up, someone is isolating themselves, and that is where a red flag comes up, and I know that that person is not as mentally healthy as they are pretending to be, right? And so, this is what the mental wellness challenge is. If you want to join us, it's over 20 women and growing as of today. Please email me. And my husband, he also has a men's group, and they did their first trauma session this past Sunday, and I'm just so happy that the men are getting on board and they are talking about trauma, and it is a safe space to talk about it. You cannot talk about this in any space all over YouTube, TikTok, those are not safe spaces. YouTube is just not a safe space to have these intimate conversations that's dealing with some real trauma, right? And you don't have to be so transparent in our groups, but you do have to face yourself. You do have to try to engage with the community so that you can practice, right? Changing your behavior and changing the way you think. So this is what a safe community looks like. You don't have to tell everybody all of your business, but you must be actively engaging within the groups and meeting the challenges and chiming in and really breaking some of the trauma off of you one step at a time. All right. So until the next video, shalom, everyone.